you all in the important webinar on climate change. I am Dr. Tabrez Ahmad. Welcome Mr. Krishan Kalra and the students, faculty, lawyers, friends, and all the other participants in the webinar on a very important topic, climate change, science, effects, and mitigation strategies. Organized by School of Law, GD Goenka University, in association with GD Goenka Uplearn Academy, promoting specialized webinars for specialized learning during crisis. In today's webinar, we have a conversation with Mr. Krishan Kalra, an engineer by training. Krishan Kalra worked in the corporate world for 38 years, followed by 7 years as Additional Secretary General of FICCI, and another 3 years as the Secretary General of the PhD Chamber of Commerce. He is past president of All India Management Association. He has also served on the board of the governor of IIM Calcutta for 5 years and as a member of the PhD Chamber of Management Committee for nearly 20 years. Since early 2010, Mr. Kalra does only voluntary work in the areas of skill development, healthcare, environment conservation, and empowerment of the differently abled people. We welcome you once again in the webinar. Now I request Mr. Krishan Kalra to share his ideas, followed by question and answer at the end.
Thank you very much, Professor Ahmad. That is very kind of introduction by you. If now we can start with the slides.
Okay, I'll share the screen.
Yeah, let's have the screen. Thank you, sir. Friends, it's a great pleasure for me to be able to share my thoughts and my views on the subject of climate change. It's unfortunate that the subject of climate change has actually taken a back seat for the last 4 months because the whole world has been inundated very suddenly by the dreaded COVID pandemic. Actually, we were expecting that in 2020 would be a year of glory for climate change because the World Economic Forum late December last year had also taken up the issue. Earlier, it was people, scientists and academics and NGOs and activists like me who were talking about climate change. But once the World Economic Forum started talking about it, then all the big industry became aware of it, and they became aware of what economic costs the world will have to bear if the climate change continues its deadly march the way it has been over the last few years. We were hoping that by 2020, the action on climate change would be in full swing and it will be on fast track, and the implementation of the sustainable development goals of all countries, the commitments made by all the countries would start fructifying. The new biodiversity agenda and framework for education for sustainable development were all set also to be launched in this year. But anyway, be it as it may, all of a sudden COVID-19 at the speed at which it has spread over the world, literally bringing the entire world to its knees, has actually backtracked the climate change action a little bit. By backtracking, I mean because the precautions that we are required to take to save ourselves from this infection require highly exaggerated use of water. We have to wash our hands 20 times a day, 30 times a day. We have to use the sanitizer. We've used masks, and there'll be mountains of cloth masks unless the biodegradable mask becomes more popular, which would become again a problem for waste management. PPEs are adding to the waste also. But well, this is something, perhaps I would look at the positive side of it. It's a warning by the nature to humanity that slow down. You know, don't be greedy with what you want to achieve in industry and what you want to achieve in the material world. And possibly we would work once the COVID-19 threat is over. The whole world would probably work yet even more strongly to arrest the march of the climate change. The climate change, of course, the scientists have talked about it. Professor Saab, please don't move the slide till I request you. No, let's go back to the previous slide, the second slide. No, the one before this. Yeah, climate change, the scientists, of course, have been, the next one, sir. The second slide, sir. Yeah, people have been talking about climate change, of course, for 50 years. It's nothing new. Scientists have been aware of it. But the movie that came in 2006, in which Al Gore was the protagonist, it was a movie called The Inconvenient Truth. That really shook the world because that painted a gory picture of what could happen to the world if we continue with business as usual and we do not mend our ways. Al Gore's organization, which is called the Climate Reality, has branches in 10 countries in the world. It started from USA. India became a branch sometime in 2007 or 2008. What has happened over the last 10 years is that earlier there were people who did not believe in climate change, detractors of climate change. People thought, of course, there were firm believers also, but people thought it was all a joke, it was all a fantasy of some mad scientists. But now, thankfully, things have changed a little. Can we have the next slide, sir? This is just a beautiful picture of our planet Earth. The idea of showing this is that this picture was taken in 1997 by the Apollo 11 mission of NASA. Why I should like to show this picture is that if today they are to take a picture of planet, our only home in the wide universe, it does not look so blue and beautiful. It looks quite a bit muddy and gray. Can we have the next one, sir? Some slide, Professor Saab, is blocking my face also. So that's okay with me as long as the other people can see it.
It's coming full. It's on the full screen.
Okay. It's going to stay like that?
Yeah, it's fine.
No, but you can see me, isn't it?
I can see the full screen.
Fine, fine. The picture on my screen, is blocking blocking my view. That's okay, doesn't matter. I want to start with a disclaimer, sir. What I'm going to talk today is no rocket science. It's something just to remind each other that climate change is something which we have to all fight together. Earlier, as I mentioned, there was ignorance about it. There was denial about it. There was denial about the role of human action in it. There was total indifference to it and lack of concern and absolutely criminal lack of action about it. But
I request Mr. Kalra to share his ideas, followed by question and answer.
Sorry, I can't hear you, sir.
Yeah, please, sir, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. I want to share a classic example with you. I went to a business school sometimes in 2014, and before the students were assembling in the auditorium, it was their convocation, and they had asked me to make this presentation. I was having a cup of tea with the director of the school, and he says, Mr. Kalra, it's very nice of you. You've come, and the students, I'm sure, would like to hear you. But what is the big deal? What will happen if the temperature of the earth rises by 2 degrees centigrade? Why this big hoo-ha about it? Believe me, sir, for 5 minutes, I was speechless. And then I told him, I said, sir, I'm amazed. I'm disappointed that someone like you, who has a double PhD, who was coaching MBA students for the last so many years, is asking this question. Because this is something which 2 degrees centigrade, if the temperature of the earth rises, can be totally disastrous. It can, it can ruin the productivity of our crops. It can do lots of harm. So in the meantime, some students came to call us and we went to the auditorium. And after that, I told him that I want to spend an hour or two with you and chat about it. He said, no, I'm extremely sorry. I've now understood what it is. Things have changed in the last 5 or 6 years. People have become aware because so many screaming headlines keep appearing every other day, which warn us about the increasing frequency of what we call extreme weather events. And extreme weather events are a cloudburst, or a flash flood, or a big storm, or a typhoon, or a cyclone, or even a drought on the other hand. Now these things they were happening earlier also, but these things are now happening with greater regularity. They are happening, and this is all due to climate change. Now look at some of the headlines over the last couple of months. By 2030, climate shift may kill 250,000 more per year. And it came from WHO. People are dying already also, but they feel that due to the climate change, another 250,000 every year might die. Third warmest November in India since 1901. This was December 19, clipping from some newspaper. Stephen Hawking, the great cosmologist and physicist who passed away 2 years ago, he had said that humans must leave Earth in 100 years to survive. Now, someone like Stephen Hawking saying that it makes an impact, it makes us realize. Switzerland, 100,000 march against climate action. Number of cyclones rose 32% in 5 years. India Meteorological Department. India could lose 25% of its wheat yield by 2050. An iceberg equal to 4 Delhi snaps off in Antarctica. And of course, there was good news also, which you see at the bottom. Jeff Bezos committed $10 billion grant to fight against climate change. Let's have the next slide, sir. Now this again, these are also again some what I call screaming headlines. 18.3 degrees centigrade, Antarctica registers hottest ever temperature. Now, Antarctica, a continent which is always frozen, they could register, however, for whatever shorter period, 18 degrees centigrade, which is catastrophic. Average daily temperature in April could be 1 to 1.5 degrees. We're seeing that in the month of June, we have already seen 46 degrees centigrade, and which is very much higher than normal. Sevenfold surge in Indians at risk due to rising sea level, because a lot of our areas, the Sundarbans area, the low-lying areas near Calcutta or Mumbai or other port towns are at risk of getting submerged due to the sea level rise. Bengal tigers may not survive climate change. It's a UN report. Humanity has made a tragic mess of Earth. This came from, who was the gentleman who said that? Sir David Attenborough. When people like that say, then I think we've got to believe this thing. A third of India's GDP heavily dependent on nature, because we are dependent on rains. Our entire agriculture is dependent on rain. Only 35% of our agriculture is irrigated. Could we have the next one, sir? So we can skip this. Microsoft commitment is a good news. They hope to go carbon negative by 2030. That means the carbon released by them would be less than the carbon generated by their operations, global operations worldwide. Could we have the next one, please? This is just to share with you a familiar scene which of a country like India, which is very vulnerable to climate change, and people living in such areas, including the city of Delhi in India, are at greater risk of water shortage and things like that. And they would be dependent on civil society, even for things like drinking water, because of the lethal heat waves which are likely to hit. Next one, please. At least 224 locations around the world set an all-time heat record in 2018. More shattering news, more screaming news. Next one, sir. Some of the slides I'm going to run quickly because we have limited time and there are 64 slides. My personal shock came first in 1981. My company used to make a special pump called the deep well hand pump, India Mark II pump. You might have heard of that. And I went to meet the engineer-in-chief at Bhopal. They wanted me to set up a unit there. And he says, Mr. Kalra, have you actually seen a pump in a rural setting? I was ashamed. I said, no, sir, I haven't. I've seen it only in our laboratories and in our factory. He said, come, I'll take you. So he took me to a village which was about 10 miles away from Bhopal. And those of you who are familiar with Bhopal, the topography of Bhopal is quite kind of mountainous, undulating. So when we reached this village on top of the little hillock, almost the entire village had gathered there. They had one of these pumps there, and they'd put garlands on the pump, they'd put swastika on it, vermilion marks, there was a joss stick there, and the whole village was gathered there. So we went there, and the engineer Saab introduced me to the head man. He said, Baba, ye saab hai jinki company ye pump banati hai. Before I knew, the gentleman fell at my feet. He was much older to me because I'm doctor of 1981. So I picked him up and I said, "Aap ye kya kar rahe ho? Aap buzurg ho." He says, "Babuji, इस पंप ने हमारी जिंदगी बदल दी और ये जो हमने पंप के ऊपर फूल डाले हैं या अगरबत्ती जलाई है ये आपको दिखाने के लिए नहीं है हम तो इस पंप की पूजा रोज करते हैं." Then suddenly he turns to the right and there was the points to some girl standing there and he says, "आपके ख्याल में लड़कियों की कितनी उम्र होगी?" तो मैंने कहा, "सर होंगी 30-35 के करीब की होगी." इसमें से कोई भी लड़की 22 साल से ऊपर की नहीं। बेचारी सारा दिन पानी ढोती रहती है जौहर से, जो यहाँ से 4 मील दूर है, और उनकी ये हालत हो जाती है। हमारे लड़कों को कोई दूसरे गांव वाला लड़की नहीं देता है क्योंकि वो कहता है कि जाके पानी भरेगी ना गांव में और क्या करेगी। Now, so that night, Professor Saab and other friends who were listening, I was unable to sleep in my hotel. I kept thinking, we have always taken water for granted because we've been lucky enough. You open the tap, you want hot water, you want cold water, 24 hours a day, water is available whenever you want, any amount of it. And look at people whose lives are totally dependent on availability of water, earlier from a Johor and now from a hand pump. This hand pump, of course, can take out 1,000 liters of water per hour, and even a child can, from as much as great a depth as 100 meters, which is 330 feet. So this was a UNICEF design, and my company was the one to commercialize it first. And we made a few million of it. In fact, we exported about 300,000 also to African countries. So after that, I really became a convert, and I thought water was the primary source of life, and we must save every drop of it. Next one, sir. This is just to share with you a forest fire that happened in Shimla in 2018, which again is caused by the vagaries of climate change. Next one, sir. Now, as I said earlier, that there is no rocket science about what I'm going to talk today, except for 5 or 6 slides about the science of climate change. As far as the rest is concerned, the effects you're all familiar with. The mitigation strategies you're all familiar with. And as my purpose, as I said earlier, is only to keep reminding each other that human action has a great role to play in bringing about climate change, and human action can help a lot in mitigating the march also. Next one, please. Now, this is a picture of the horizon. Again, taken probably from some Apollo mission. We got this picture from NASA. You can see the bright sun shining through the horizon. But the blue band that you see on the top is what we call as the atmosphere of the Earth. And you can get an idea about it, just to give you an idea about the thickness of the atmosphere of the Earth. It's like if you apply a coat of varnish on a cricket ball, or a coat of polish or varnish or something like that. That is the kind of thickness as compared to the diameter of the Earth. But that little thickness also is the cost of the entire nuisance of climate change, as some of the next slides I'll explain to you. Next one, sir. Now, this is the process how our planet Earth gets heated by solar energy. This happens 24 hours a day. At some part of the world, 24 hours a day, sun is shining, and rays of the sun are hitting the Earth. Some of it gets absorbed by the Earth. Some of it, the red arrows that you see, goes back into the atmosphere, and part of it, this one red arrow that you see, gets trapped between the Earth's atmosphere, which you saw when you saw a picture of the horizon, and the surface of the Earth. Now, this is what getting trapped there. This is what we call greenhouse gases. The thicker the blue rim, the atmosphere of the Earth, greater is the capacity of greenhouse gases getting trapped there and warming up the planet. Next one, please. Yeah, you have to click it once again, sir. One more time. One more also. Thank you. Thank you. Now, this is a slide which I think beautifully explains the science of climate change. You can see the sun on the left and you see four of the planets on the right. The closest planet, Mercury, then Venus, then Earth and Mars. They may not be exactly to scale the distance from the sun, but relatively these are the positions that Earth is after Mercury and Venus farther from the sun, and Mars is even the farthest. Temperature of the Earth over the last 650,000 years has sustained around 15 degrees centigrade. Whereas Mars, which is farther, is minus 55 degrees centigrade, is quite understandable because Mars is farther than Sun, farther from the Sun as compared with Earth. Venus is also understandable because Venus is much closer to Sun as compared with Earth, and it has a temperature of 457 degrees centigrade. Now, just click it once again. Professor Saab, just click once again, the temperature of Mercury will show up. I put the question just to ask the audience, what should be the temperature of the Mercury? Normally, if I was asked to guess that, I would say probably 1,000 degrees centigrade or 2,000 degrees centigrade or something, because it's much closer to Sun as compared with Venus. But the actual temperature of Mercury is only, I use the word only because I'm comparing with Venus, Venus, sorry, not Venus. I was mispronouncing, my apologies. Venus, Mercury is only 167 degrees centigrade. Why is that so? It is a lot closer to the sun as compared with Venus, but it's a lot cooler. The reason is that blue ring. The blue ring around Mercury, which captures the greenhouse gases and retains them there, is very, very thin. That around Venus is very, very thick. Around the Earth is still reasonable. Around the Mars is even thinner than that, relatively. And this is where, as I said, this is the main cause of mischief or warming of the Earth. Let's have the next slide, sir. Oh, this we can skip. Let's move to the next one. Everyone knows that fossil fuels is causing this also we can skip, sir. Let's go to the next one. This is just, we can take some comfort from the fact that our per capita emissions are very low as compared to the United States, China, and the European Union. But when we sit in the negotiation, international negotiation, the international community pays no attention to per capita emission. They only talk about total emission. Our total emission, because of our higher population, are obviously higher than that of USA, not as high as China, but higher than European Union and USA. But that is a political matter. That's a matter of our negotiations. Let's have the next one, sir. Now, this is also a part of the slides which will explain to you how scientists have arrived at the temperature of the Earth over the last 650,000 years. They drilled cores into it. An ice core is about 3 meters tall and maybe about 4 inches in diameter, which is drilled into the Antarctic ice, and then that is analyzed, which I'll show you in the next slides. Next one, sir. Now, this is an ice core that I was talking about. In an ice core, you see lots of air bubbles trapped there. Whenever we see ice, there are air bubbles trapped there. Just as in case of trees, that where the rings of the tree can tell us about the age of a tree. Sorry, there's some highlights keep appearing on the computer screen. Just as in the case of a tree, from the rings of the tree, biologists can tell you how old the tree is. Similarly, NASA scientists have been able to find out by analyzing the air bubbles at different places in the core that what is the age of that air bubble, and from the rings on that core, and by analyzing that air bubble, what is the carbon concentration is that. And the next slide, I will present to you that. Next one, sir. Now, this is a beautiful slide which is captured. In fact, I was saying 650,000 years. They seem to have data here for the last 800,000 years for the temperature of the Earth. Now, as you see, this blue curve has moved within a narrow range. Sorry, this is about the carbon concentration, not the temperature. The next would be the temperature. The carbon concentration has remained under 280 for the last 800,000 years, which is quite comfortable. And let's have the next slide, which will show the temperature curve also on the same. Excuse me. These two curves are beautiful curves. The blue one is showing the carbon concentration in parts per million, and the white one is showing the average temperature of the Earth. You see that both the curves are moving in tandem. They seem to be moving virtually parallel to each other. Whenever the carbon concentration has risen, the temperature has also risen. Whenever the carbon concentrations come down, the temperatures have come down. And scientists have arrived, they have concluded that there is a direct relationship between the two. Now, so far, the carbon concentration, when I say so far, till the last 60 years or so, carbon concentration remained within 280 parts per million, and the temperature also remained average temperature about 15 degrees centigrade. Let's click once again, sir. But over the last 60 to 70 years, ever since the pace of industrialization has picked up, the carbon concentration in 2019 was 415 parts per million. For 800,000 years, it remains it did not exceed 280. And then suddenly in the next 70 years, it goes to 415. The figure for 2020 is about 420 or 422. I have deliberately not shown the extension of the white curve. I leave it to your students to imagine what could happen. But I can share with you that in the last 70 years, temperature of the Earth has already gone up by about 0.8 degrees centigrade. And scientists expect that by 2050, it would go up by 1.2 degrees centigrade. And by the turn of the century, it would go up by about between 2 to 3.5 degrees centigrade if things continue with business as usual and we do not mend our ways. Let's have the next one, sir. The next one, sir. Yes, I was saying 0.8, but one of the reports talks about 1.4 degrees centigrade. This is a McKinsey report, which is in fact forecasting that by the turn of the century, it could be 3 to 4 degrees. There are different reports. I mentioned 2.5 to 3.5 degrees centigrade. McKinsey report, which is more recent, which came out only in February, is talking about 3 to 4 degrees centigrade. Next one, please. This is from an article in The Economist, where it is talking about carbon dioxide emissions. In 1900, there were 2 billion tons in the year. In 1950, there were 6 billion tons. And in 2015, 40 billion tons. The purpose of sharing this slide with you, friends, is that whereas the GDP has doubled 4 times in 20th century, the carbon emissions have gone up from 2 billion tons to 40 billion tons, 20 times. So that is the kind of scale at which the carbon emissions, and they come from all industrial activity, they come from aircraft, they come from motor vehicles, they come from ships, they come from every activity that we undertake. Next one, please. This is to share with you one of the biggest culprits of climate change. And later on one of the slides, I'll show you about what is the pathetic state of number of trees in our country. Now, this is the total permission. This was an answer given to the parliament by the Environment Minister, Supriyo Babul, which he did in July 2019, that the official permission was given to cut down 1 crore trees, starting from 2014-15 to 2018-19, which is really suicidal as far as the climate is concerned. Next, please. I'm going to come back to the trees in the next 1 or 2 slides. These are the multiple effects of climate change. Having talked about the science of climate change, health, water scarcity, which probably is the most scary, economy, damage to infrastructure, and food production. Both productivity and nutrition value go down with climate change, which some of the subsequent slides will show. Let's have the next one, sir. Now, this is to, let's click it once again. It will show 2019 also, or 2017. Yeah, sorry, it's not in the same slide. You saw 1980 that this entire Mars was covered with ice, this picture. And it's small span of 27 years, this entire Mars, which would be probably the size of maybe twice the size of India, had just split from the ice and fallen into the sea. And then obviously it becomes salt water and serves no purpose of it. This was somewhere near the Arctic. Let's have the next one, please. Now you might be wondering, why am I showing you a picture of a frog? Why I'm showing this, that frog is a very hardy species. Frogs have survived the dinosaurs' age. Dinosaurs died, but the frogs survived that. Till I was a kid, we used to see these frogs very often whenever we went near a water body, a canal or a river or a well or anything. But I don't think the students sharing or watching this presentation would have ever seen a frog, because the frogs, we're losing the frogs. Now one hardly ever sees a frog. Maybe some of them are there in some villages and all that. So we are at risk of losing lots of species on the earth. Nearly 50% of all species would be lost to the world within this century. Next one, please. This again is to show with you, this is nothing esoteric, nothing exotic, it's a mosquito. Till about 35 years ago, nobody living on the hills of Shimla or Nainital or Mussoorie or Manali had ever heard of malaria. Those were the diseases confined to the cities. But over the last 30, 40 years, these vertebrae have also moved to the hills to much higher altitude because of the warming that is taking place. And now one hears of malaria and dengue and other diseases in Himachal and other hilly areas also. Next one, please. No, I think you'll have to click it once more. (93% of the extra heat. Now this, to begin with, we would think it's a good news. 93% of the extra heat retained by the man-made global warming goes into the ocean. One would have thought that only 7% is being absorbed by the earth, so the effect should be not too much. But as some of the subsequent slides will show you, even that 7% is quite catastrophic. But this 93% is also causing a lot of nuisance. We are losing marine vertebrae. Almost 50% of that we have left. India is not a country where seafood is staple food. But for a lot of countries in the world, seafood is their staple diet. And they are at the risk of losing their food security because of this. Then warming of the ocean means rising levels of the ocean and putting the low-level areas, which are just beyond the sea level, at risk. Countries like Maldives, for example, are at risk of getting totally inundated and getting lost to the world. Next one, please. Now, this is what I mentioned to you, that population of marine vertebrae in the world has already declined in this short span of 42 years by 49% on an average. And if any further loss in the marine vertebrata would mean that many countries in the world for whom seafood is staple would be at great risk, their food security would be at risk. Next one, please. Next one, sir. Oh, this is just another shocker that in North India and Amritsar on 2nd of June 2019, the temperature touched 50.6 degrees centigrade. And this is what happens when people don't even get drinking water. Next one, sir. August 29, 2017, Mumbai received 1 month's worth of rain in one day. Next one, please. Next one, sir. I'm sure many of you were witness to it. I was personally there in Bombay that day, and I witnessed the havoc that rain caused. Rishikesh, Uttarakhand, we're all familiar. In 2013, Kedarnath and Badrinath pilgrimages had to be cancelled. People had to be brought back. Next one, sir. Kerala, huge floods in 2017, 2018, and again in 2019. And the damage was estimated at $2.7 billion. Can we have the next one, sir? The next slide, sir. Yeah. Drought. As I was telling you, that extreme weather events are not limited to flash floods and cloudbursts and rains, heavy rain, but they also cause droughts. For example, this is a horrible scenario from Chennai in May 2019. That's just about a year ago. Next one, please. Next one. Sundarbans. I was talking of the areas which are low level. Sundarbans is an area about 100 miles from Calcutta, and it has lots of mangroves. Mangroves are trees which protect the erosion of the land from the vagaries of the ocean. The ocean waves hitting the landmass, but we are losing these mangroves very rapidly. In the last 40 years, 20% of the mangroves have been lost. Next one, please. The solutions are very simple. The solutions are at hand. And once again, these solutions are no rocket science. They are our everyday actions. Next one, sir. One major mantra to combat climate change is conservation. Conservation of food, conservation of energy, conservation of water. It's colossal the way we waste water. For example, when I go, not for the last 3 months, but when I go for a walk in the morning, I find drivers washing their cars with huge 1-inch hoses of water, even the driveways and the patch of road in front of them. So I tell them, कि भाई ये क्यों कर रहे हो? आधी बाल्टी पानी की बहुत होती है गाड़ी धोने के लिए. Some of them are nice and they say, अंकल जी आगे से नहीं करेंगे. There are others who say, हमारे मालिक का ट्यूबवेल है, हमारे मालिक की बिजली है, आपको क्या तकलीफ होती है अगर हम ये करते हैं? I can't argue with them कि पानी and बिजली is nobody's private property. They belong to the nation. They belong to society. Then there's a third set who keep quiet, but the moment I turn around, they say, कि बूढ़ा पागल है, ये कहता रहता है, ऐसे रोज कहता रहता है, इसकी सुनने की कोई जरूरत नहीं. But the fact, and I'm only talking of solutions which we as individuals and societies can do. Government will tackle the bigger issues. Government will tackle the issues like linking of rivers where it is necessary, or lining up the canals, or fixing up the leaking pipes, or fixing up water supply, and checking the water wastage and things like that. Next one, please. The biggest thing that we can do and the easiest thing that we can do is to plant trees. One of the next slides will show you, which I mentioned about how few trees we have. In India, the number of trees is only, yeah, here you got that slide, 28 per capita. Whereas a country like Canada has almost 9,000 trees per capita. That is why Canada is less affected by the vagaries of climate change. Even Russia has about 4,500. China, the country which the whole world criticizes, but they've increased their forest cover to 102. US has 716. And this forest cover in India can rise from 28 to 100 per capita in the next 10 years, merely if each one of us, every single citizen of the country, plants 10 sustainable trees. I say sustainable because one loses about one third of the trees once you plant trees. And for the first 3 years, you've got to look after the trees, either put a guard or have them in a fenced area, things like that. And if each one of us plants just 10 trees in the year for the next 10 years, the population of trees in the country will rise per capita to 100 from 28 right now. Next one, please. So trees, planting trees, lots of trees is the panacea. This is the another important factor. Now it's a picture of a simple water faucet, which we are very familiar with. We see it all the time when we want to wash our hands, or we want to shave, or we want to wash our cars, or our RO systems are releasing water, or we are having a shower or a bath or shaving, anything we are doing, water. But what is wrong with this is that most of the time the water keeps flowing. We do not stop it. What we are supposed to do is that in 5 seconds, or in fact less than that, 2 seconds, rinse our hands, shut off the water stream, then soap your hands with liquid soap or cake soap or whatever it is, and rub it. These days one is supposed to do it for 20 seconds because of the COVID, but earlier also it was 5 to 10 seconds it would take. We can save in the simple act of washing hands once about a liter to liter and a half of water for everyone. And in a country like India, and particularly during the present COVID crisis, we wash our hands many, many times a day, and a lot of water can be saved. And I'll show you a calculation in one of the subsequent slides also. Same thing happens when we're having a bath, when we're shaving, when we are cleaning something, our utensils or something like that, a crockery or thalis or katoris or things like that. A lot of water is flowing out of our RO system. Someone once told me that for every 1 liter of purified water that we get, 3 liters gets wasted. So let's move to the next one. So water wastage, if we can check, in addition to planting trees, would be a very big help. Let's have the next one, sir. Now, this is a chart which I want to share with you, that, and I will talk only about our daily bath. Now, we can either have a bath traditional way with a bucket and lota, which our forefathers always did, and they never use more than 15 to 20 liters of water on having a bath. Or we can have a dry shower. Dry shower is that you rinse your body with under the shower, then shut off the shower, then you apply soap to the body, then you again switch it on, and then you shave, then you rinse it again and get rid of the soap and the shampoo, etc. Total water that we'll use for that dry shower would be 30 liters per bath. But if you do not shut off the faucet and have a wet shower, we end up using about 60 liters. And if we have a pressure shower, which many of us do, many of the societies have pressurized the water pipe, we end up using about 100 showers. Then, of course, there are all kinds of jacuzzis and other things which use up to 300 liters of water per bath. Assuming only that 15%, only 15% of the people in India have access to showers. Maybe even that is high, maybe it is only 10%, but I've assumed that 15% of the people have access to shower. Also assume that on an average, an Indian takes 1.5 showers in a day, because in summer, we have to take 2 showers in a day, because most of the time, it is 9 months of the year one has to. The saving of water with 15%, that is 195 million people, taking average 1.5 showers a day, saving 40 liters. That is the difference between wet shower and, let's say, average of bucket bath and dry shower. Potential saving per bath per annum is 4,000, sorry, not per bath, potential saving for the country per annum is 4,300 metric tons of water. That means 4.3 billion tons of water. Just imagine one action of having a bath a little more carefully than what we are used to can save 4.3 billion liters of water. And a liter of water, as you know, is a kilo of water. So 4.3 billion tons of water can be used, which is a colossal amount, particularly when a lot of the people are dying without water. Next one, sir. I talked about water conservation and I talked about energy conservation. One of the biggest things to consume energy is to use public transport, like metro. Next one, please. Because the energy used per capita, let's say per kilometer, per man kilometer trip on a metro is only a fraction of what we'll use on our own scooter or car or private vehicle. Clean cook stoves. Now, a lot of the country still has to use wood for their cooking because despite, although this Prime Minister Modi's campaign, Ujjwala campaign has provided LPG to a lot of the villagers, but still there would be a few 100,000 or maybe a couple of million people who are using wood. And if they are to use these kind of more efficient stoves, they can cut down the emission by about 80% and the amount of fuel used by about 50%. Next one, please. Next is another very important slide is the love for 18 degrees centigrade. The moment we come home or get into our office or somewhere, to a hotel room or something, we are quite used to switching on the temperature of the AC and setting it at 18 degrees centigrade. And 18 also because that is the minimum that you can set on your AC. The thermostat doesn't allow you to take. But there is absolutely no need of 18 degrees centigrade. Next slide, sir, and I'll explain to you. I actually went and talked to a major air conditioner manufacturer. Daikin is a well-known Japanese name. I said, do you really recommend 18 degrees centigrade? They said, no, sir, we don't. You look at our manual. And he pointed out this page of which I took a picture. And he says that recommended temperature setting for cooling is 26 to 28 degrees centigrade. And I'm telling you from personal experience that when we go to sleep at night, our AC is never ever lower than 26 degrees centigrade. Yes, we might use it at 22 or 23 or 24 for maybe 1 hour or so. But after that, you don't need that. It's a funny thing. We use the AC at 18 degrees and then we use blankets to cover ourselves up. Nothing can be more foolish. There is no need. A thin sheet is enough. And use the thermostat setting at 25 degrees or 24 degrees centigrade. If 26 is not comfortable for you. Energy saving. Let's move to the next one. We have to quickly go to food saving also. We covered only. Now, the amount of food that we waste in our country is criminal totally. I'm sure this kind of a picture you are quite familiar with. People order food and then leave half of that on the plates and all. It's totally criminal. And one of the biggest wastes of food is the celebrated Wazwan in Kashmir, for example. Next one, please. Because growing food requires, again, water, it requires energy, it requires fossil fuel burning, and it causes increase in greenhouse gases and all. The good news is that we are switching over fairly rapidly to solar energy and wind energy. And the world's largest solar plant is coming up in Ladakh. The tenders have already been awarded, I believe. And it's my suggestion to the government has always been that we should put a price on water, even if it is 1 paisa per bucket or 1 paisa per liter. People do not value anything that is free. But government, for its political reason, wants to keep giving free water, free electricity, and free everything, which ends up wasting. I even suggested to Mr. Kejriwal, our Chief Minister of Delhi, that, sir, you have allotted, let's say, 100 units of free electricity. You tell them that you will get this incentive, whatever you save out of the 100 units. If you use only 80, then I'll give you a reward. Don't give them otherwise free water and free electricity and things like that. Next one, please. Next, sir. Continuing with the good news, a Mumbai mass last year came out with the alarming, I would say, finding. They said, they use these, if any of you have been to a mosque, there are lots of rows and rows of water faucets where people do wuzu. Wuzu is the act of washing hands and feet and face, etc., before they go for their prayers. So they worked out and they installed special nozzles, which are available now on Amazon for just about 200 rupees, which sprinkle the water and give lower amount of water the same effect for washing hands and feet and face. And they realized that each mosque per day was saving 20,000 liters of water. Now imagine the tens of thousands of mosques in the country and temples and gurdwaras and things like that where we waste water. If everybody was to concentrate in that, how much water can be saved? We can move to the next one, sir. Despite Mr. Donald Trump, the president of USA, not being a believer in climate change, over 100 global companies, and many of them from USA, as you see from this list, have committed that they will go to 100% renewable energy within the next 10 years. Next one, sir. Next slide. This I mentioned to you already, that our solar PV capacity is rising very quickly, the figure for 2016, and wind energy also. And today, I think almost earlier it was solar was giving 5% and wind was giving 7%. Now I think we reached about 22% of our all energy requirement, which is about 350,000 megawatts, is 350 gigawatts, is from renewable sources like wind and solar energy. Next one, please. Well, to sum it up, tips for going green: plant trees, conserve water. Now, water conservation is of many ways. One was only our daily acts of washing and cleaning and bathing and all that. Rainwater harvesting. Although legally we are supposed to do it, but most people don't do it. We should. It is not only enough to make it mandatory. I think we've got to make sure that people are actually doing rainwater harvesting. Our dining tables and conference tables, we waste so much of water. A big 1 liter bottle of water is kept in front of every delegate in the conference. He or she uses maybe 250 milliliters out of it. The rest is thrown away. Washing dishes and vehicles and floors, one can use the water saved from the RO. Personal hygiene, I've talked about. RO water. A lot of the water comes out of ROs and also as condensate out of the air conditioners. If we can connect tiny tubes to them and direct this water to jerry cans or to our gardens or anywhere, we'll be able to use a lot of that water. Our water efficient urinals and WCs, which in a lot of places are now being used, waterless urinals also, all those steps we've got to take. Next one, please. So that was conservation of water. Now conservation of energy. Use more energy efficient LEDs. LEDs, a 40-watt LED has the same luminosity as a 300 to 500 watt normal incandescent lamp. Use star appliances, 5-star rating and things like that, use less energy, like refrigerators and ACs, etc., and all that. Switch off something. I've seen in many organizations a sticker on the switchboard, every switchboard, SOS. SOS used to be earlier save our souls, but now it means switch off something. So if you're leaving a room, switch off a fan, switch off an AC, switch off a light, or things like that. Carpool, set your thermostat higher, don't use it at 18 degrees centigrade. Climb stairs instead of using the lifts. Walk, cycle, use public transport instead of individual cars. Conserve food, check wastage at parties, whatever is still wasted, redirect it to the needy people. There are now organizations which collect leftover food to hotels and parties and all and distribute it to the needy people. Reduce emissions by carpooling, by use of public transport, by regularly checking your pollution under control, this thing, and avoid havans and roofs and agarbattis. Next one, please. Put a cost in carbon. I think we can skip this. Next one, sir. Professor Saab, next slide. No, the one before this. The one before this. No, this is a video. The slide before this. Yeah, this was my last slide. We have inherited the earth from our forefathers. We are trustees for it. We have to leave this for our children, at least in the same condition that we inherited it. We can't leave it in a worse condition. Mahatma Gandhi used to say that the earth has enough for everyone's need, but it does not have enough for everyone's needs. Thank you very much, friends. I'm sorry I've taken 5 or 10 minutes more than the time allotted to me. But if Professor Ahmad allows, I'm open to any questions. Otherwise, we can wind it up, and you can send me the questions on my email ID, which is available with Professor Ahmad. So I'm done, sir. I have. I'm sorry. You have to unmute your speaker. Yeah.
So there are some questions that we can take.
No, I'm happy if you have the time. I'm sorry that I've taken more time.
Yeah. So I think there's a question that how the COVID-19 is affected because of the climate change. How the COVID-19 has affected the climate change.
I have not followed the question, sir.
Because of COVID-19, we are able to shut down a lot of industries, stop the transportation, and then it was globally. How it is affecting
not only industry, the flights have been shut down, the trains were shut down, industries have been shut. It has made a difference. And the last evaluation in May was that the emissions had come down by about 10 to 12%. But we'll be back to normal with that. We can't do without industry. We can't do without the flights and all that. The moment, as it is, the government is planning from the month of July to allow international flights in India also. So I think the solution lies in if we adopt work from home as a new normal and we cut down on our commuting. For example, a young man who was commuting 2 hours each way to his office or her office, if that is cut down, and a few million of people do that, that would be a permanent solution. There'll be less commuting. There would be less release of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. There'll be more time available to the people. They'll become more efficient. Their life-work balance will improve. There'll be a greater peace of mind in that. They'll be able to produce more. So the new normal has to be less travel, because already a lot of companies are doing meetings on, like we are doing this meeting on Zoom. Otherwise, maybe 100 of us would have commuted, some in cars, some in buses, some in trains, or things like that. And we would have got together at the GD Goenka Academy. Now, all that has been saved. So those are the kind of things which would save. But as I said to begin with, COVID is also causing a lot of harm to climate change. We are generating, we are wasting a lot more water and detergent and soap and sanitizer, and wasting a lot of fabric on PPE and masks, etc., and all that. So all that will have to be disposed of suitably. That is.
So how the food chain, food web got affected because of the climate change? Because the zooplankton, phytoplanktons are there. inside the sea. Then we have small animals and all. This entire link is there because of the pollution at the environment, in the water, air, entire food chain and food web is getting affected because of the climate change. So what do you feel about this particular challenge?
Sir, there is a very direct relationship between polluting the seas through our rivers, and I mentioned in one of the slides, in fact, one of my slides somehow got missed, which also mentioned about how much productivity and nutrition value of the food is lost by every half a degree increase in the temperature of the earth. That is as far as the wheat and rice and vegetables and fruits are concerned. Reduction in their production quantity and reduction in their nutrition value. So the net effect for every half a degree increase in the temperature of the earth is losing almost 30 to 35%. That is on as far as our food is concerned. But loss of 49% of the marine vertebrae means that the marine food, the seafood quantity has suffered hugely. And for a lot of countries in the world, the seafood is staple food. A lot of the world lives on fish and other seafood. So they are finding it an uphill task. So there is a direct relationship.
There's a report that because of the COVID-19, it is affected positively to the ozone layer, which is the filter about the ultraviolet rays in the world. What do you feel about this aspect?
COVID, in fact, since the onset of the COVID, there has been some repair of the ozone hole because of the reduction in the greenhouse gases. You know, the ozone hole was becoming bigger due to the increased release of greenhouse gases. Since there is a little bit of a respite in the release of greenhouse gases temporarily, so ozone hole has become, in fact, slightly smaller over the last 3 months. But the aim is to totally close the ozone hole, which may never happen actually.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much for your very nice deliberations and very excellent slides and presentation you have made. It was very useful for all the participants, for all the people who will be joining on the YouTube and also will be watching the video. It is very useful for the students, faculty, and the entire world. Thank you very much for finding time from busy schedule and delivering very great talk. You are having a lot of experience in this field. The passion that you have passion about the climate change. You delivered lectures throughout the world, and it was an honor for us to get time and deliver the talk on our platform. We'll be happy to host you in our campus when the lockdown gets over. So thank you very much, and sir, wish you all the best.
Sir. It was a pleasure and honor for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you all the participants for joining on various channels. Thank you.
I'm grateful to all the participants and to you and to my friend Vijay Pava who put us together, connected us.
Thank you. Thank you all of you. Bye.